For those of you I don't, my name is Elizabeth. I'm the director here at the Performing Arts Center. I've been here for about 2 years, so if I don't know you personally, don't take offense, because I think it takes about 7 years around here to really learn everyone's names. I'm trying really hard. I'm here representing the Performing Arts Center, but also Yuri is here representing United Arts Alliance, and this is part of our Creative Vision lecture series that we started a few months ago. And I will let Yuri say a couple words about that, and then I'll go ahead and introduce Michael.
I'd like to acknowledge, as is always a good manners, that we have with us a member of Janesville City Council, Councilmember Farrell, and it's really nice to have some recognition of the work that we're trying to all of us do here, and I'm really excited to have Elizabeth do so much of this work because she deserves it. I'm just really excited that UAA can take a leadership role in this. I think this is something that hopefully is going to benefit all of us. This is all the arts group working together, and it's like some kind of magic. So, and I'm really excited we're going to have somebody here who's going to help us how to market ourselves better. And that's something we can all always learn a little more, and I'm very excited to let you present our speaker.
Great. So Michael has provided me with a biography, and I'm a horrible memorizer, so if you don't mind, Michael, I'm just going to read, if that's okay with you. I met Michael for the first time with Wisconsin Presenters Network. Wisconsin Presenters Network is a group of individuals that all run performing arts centers or similar organizations in the state. They get together a few times a year, and Michael is a proud member of the group, even though he's now retired. Well, semi-retired, I should say, from the group. And, just really stuck out to me this presentation that him and some of our other colleagues gave at our last Presenters Network meeting. So with that, I'll give you a little bit of idea about Michael. He's a nationally respected performing arts presenter, as I mentioned, an arts administrator, and his career has spanned 4 decades in both the commercial and non-for-profit cultural and entertainment industries. He has directed 3 major facilities, the Wisconsin Union Theater, the Overture Center for the Arts, and the Coronado Performing Arts Center. Many of you know those facilities in Madison and Rockford. He has chaired and served on the boards of directors and grant panels of numerous national, regional, and local organizations, including the National Endowment for the Arts, Arts Midwest, the 10 Chimneys Foundation, and the Wisconsin Council on Tourism, many of which our Performing Arts Center does get grants from, so thank you, Michael, for that. In 2001, the Wisconsin Presenters Network established the Michael Goldberg Award for Leadership in the Arts. He lives west of Madison with his wife, mezzo-soprano Alison Apple. Did I pronounce that?
Right.
Great. And their beloved golden retriever, Ajax. And it has been my dream to get a golden retriever, so we should talk about that sometime. Personal interests and activities include opera stage directing, the works of Gilbert and Sullivan. Guess who doesn't like the works of Gilbert and Sullivan? And UW-Wisconsin women's hockey and reading and everything else. So without further ado, this is Michael.
How many people have dogs? Don't you just love your dogs? Some days. The Goldens are doofuses. I mean, they're as friendly as you could hope them to be, but they're really kind of stupid. But very, very friendly. I just want to mention the Wisconsin Presenters Network. The Wisconsin Presenters are people who run performing venues around the state. And some of them are the big monsters like Overture Center and the Fox Cities Performing Arts Center. Some of them are, as I was just saying to Julie, are connected to high schools. There is a high school auditorium at Gibraltar High School up in Door County, which is also the Fish Creek Auditorium. Economowoc High School Auditorium also has a performing arts center. There are several of them, about a dozen of them around the state that do that. And then there are smaller performing arts centers like the Shower Center in Hartford and others, and Janesville right here. Wisconsin Presenters is a network of organizations that deliver the arts. There are actually 85 members of the WPN, and you can go to the Wisconsin, just go online and look up Wisconsin Presenters Network. The reason I mention it is because in many cities, that presenting organization is kind of an anchor for a lot of other cultural and arts activities. And the network goes back to the mid-70s. Wisconsin was one of the first states to start a statewide network of presenters. Now there are presenters networks in dozens of states around the country, but we're still one of the best, and we're definitely one of the earliest. And they don't have an individual membership, so I don't appear in the listing because you have to be an organization to belong, but they let me belong anyway because they think I'm organized. This was presented to you as a lecture. I'm not going to lecture. I'm not a lecturer. I'd like this to be a conversation, some discourse, some interchange. What I'd like to do is discuss a few ideas about what kind of challenges and difficulties we're all experiencing, whatever aspect of the arts we're connected with. I presented a program on specifically arts marketing that Elizabeth attended back in June at a network meeting, and I'll make that the kind of core of our conversation. We'll talk about some marketing ideas, and then I'll kind of close it out with what I call the sermon, which is why we all do what we do and why we ought to go on doing it, no matter how difficult it seems to be sometimes. But I do like to know who I'm talking to. This is not a quiz. There'll not be a test on this, but I'm going to go around. It's going to take a minute. Don't spend too long on this, but I'd like you to each tell me who you are and what you do, what enterprise or activity you are connected with that makes you participatory in the Alliance, and the biggest problem or issue that you are facing in that endeavor right now. What organization are you with? What's your name? And what's the single biggest thing you're wrestling with? If you can do that. I know you've all got dozens of things, but pick one. Sorry. I heard a presentation by the woman who's the Director of Economic Development for the city of Rockford. Somebody said to her, when you try to promote businesses in your community, what do they want to know? She said they have two questions. What's the education system? What's the cultural quality of life? They didn't ask about the cost per square foot for commercial space. They can find that out without any difficulty. They want to know, what is the life going to be like for my kids? What is the life going to be for myself, my employees, my colleagues, the people that I live with and live with when I'm not at work? Quality of life is critical everywhere. All over the city, the country, all over the state, there are cities that are making the arts a kind of anchor for advancement and development. And it is working. The data tells us that in the last 5 years, since 2008, during the economic setback, the arts, like everybody else, lost ground, but they did not lose as much ground as many other endeavors. And in a lot of cities, the comeback was kind of catalyzed by the arts organizations. Where am I talking about? I'm talking about Eau Claire, Wausau, which lost Century and a lot of other insurance companies, Paducah, Kentucky, Wanakee, big investment in downtown Wanakee of all places. I understand my pal from Wanakee was here last time. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. It can be done. The presentation that I did back in June that Elizabeth heard was all about marketing for people who sell tickets. But the crux of what we talked about really had to do with the problems that anybody facing a marketing challenge has. Marketing the arts is no different from marketing anything else. You have to know your product, you have to know your audience, you have to see what the audience wants, and then structure the message about your product so that it fits that desire and need. In other words, we all know that the stuff we have is great, but the people who we want to buy into it don't necessarily know that. They're not buying into it unless we can make the case that what they want is what we have. What do you think the problems are that are impeding our ability to market the arts? Just pick one.
Not knowing our audience well enough.
Not enough information about who our buyers are or who we want them to be or how to reach them. If we know who they are and where they spend their time, we can reach them. How about overabundance of choices? Too darn many things to choose from any given night of the week, okay? Money, obviously a problem. Do you think tickets in this community are overpriced? The audience probably does, but they would be mistaken. The truth of the matter is the tickets are pretty consistently at the same level no matter what part of the country you go to. If you're in a comparable community, tickets in Milwaukee are no more or less expensive than they are in Indianapolis. Tickets in Janesville are no more expensive than they are or less expensive than they are in Hartford and in La Crosse. In other words, the ticket prices are calibrated to the community's level. Yet the audience says that money is an issue. Well, the truth is money is an issue for them. Nobody has to buy a ticket or spend any money on art. It's strictly discretionary. So you have to make the case that you're a worthwhile investment. We've got other problems too. How about television binging? How about people who decide to spend all Friday, Saturday, and Sunday watching the last 5 years of Mad Men because they've never seen it before? It's pretty inexpensive. It's an alternative, it's a place to go, it's something to do that doesn't cost. And we have other things impinging on our ability to sell our stuff as well. Well, a lot of the ideas that I have about this I garnered from a book called Marketing the Arts to Death. And the guy who wrote it is the guy who was the marketing director for Cameron McIntosh, who produced The Lion King and a lot of other monster shows. And this guy's responsibility was to keep that audience churning. He says the first problem we face with marketing the arts is language. Our language is frozen in time. Those of you who run a theater or sell a ticket, even those of you who are putting out brochures to promote your art, pick up a brochure from 50 years ago and just contains the names of the shows and the dates of performance and the locations. And I think you'll find that it's exactly the same language being used a decade ago and 3 decades ago that we're using now. There's also an assumption on people's part who are in the arts that everybody cares about the arts. I mean, why wouldn't they? It's great stuff. We know that. But we cannot assume that the people we are selling to really have a desire for what we are selling. We have to persuade them, again, that what we are selling them is something that they want and need and have a use for. That means you got to find out who they are and what they want and need. Example. Ed and Helen, 2 kids, 14 and 9. They're looking for an entertainment opportunity that allows them to share family time. Great stuff for kids. Family memories for a lifetime. Okay? The message resonates with them. Let's take these 4 women between the ages of 23 and 31 who are spending Thursday night in a bar drinking and talking about how terrible men are. And they're trying to decide what to do on Friday night. They didn't think about this a week ago, a month ago. They didn't think about it when you sent the brochure out the previous spring and said, well, let's go to the show next October. They're thinking about it on Thursday night. What do they want? They want a shared experience. Let's see if so-and-so is interested. Let's see if so-and-so is interested. That sounds like an idea. It all comes up very, very short turnaround. So let's check with our friends. How do they do that? They don't go to the paper to see what's playing in the nearest theater. They pull out their phones. And the message better be available quickly and briefly because they don't have a lot of time. They want a shared experience as well, but they want a shared social experience that can be preceded by a good time and followed by a good time. College students. I used to work with university students and we could never get the fraternity and sorority kids to come to a show. They'd rather go to a bar and kind of put the moves on each other. So we finally sent the students out who are our programmers and said, tell them that it's easier to put the moves on somebody when you've got a conversation going on and you have something to talk about. So come to the show first, have a shared experience, and have a conversation about what it is you saw. So you're not just standing there saying, duh, 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 because we all know what we're on anyway. All right, my point is, then we've got George and Cynthia, who are both retired. The kids are long gone. They're in their mid-60s. They've got a little bit of leisure time. They've got a little bit of leisure money. And they're looking for experiences that they can feel comfortable and safe with, right? What I'm saying is it's research. There are marketing firms in this town that do this all the time for all kinds of products and services. We assume people care. We often use language in our advertising that's absolutely meaningless. The symphony ever put out a brochure that says, "Celebrate spring, come to hear the symphony"? Did anybody here ever buy a ticket for the purpose of celebrating the spring? Now, occasionally there's a legitimate celebration. Madison Symphony has a 20th anniversary of its conductor. Celebrate his 20th anniversary. That's the real thing. But the language that doesn't resonate is often meaningless and doesn't register for the audience we're directing it to. Sometimes our language is artificial. JPAC is proud to present. Well, we're glad you've got a lot of pride in what you do, but that doesn't resonate for me. What I'm getting at here is you've got to look at the language you're using. Sometimes you have to use it, and sometimes it's legitimate. But you've got to revisit the language that you're using and experience it from the standpoint of the person to whom you are directing it. Sometimes our brochures are narcissistic. We fill them with raves and quotes. Everybody says we're the best orchestra in the region. The critics love my work. And you will too, maybe. All right? Sometimes our language is very, very passive. Spread the word. Well, okay, let me do that. Sometimes we are occasionally guilty of being, we know that the arts are not some kind of haughty enterprise. They're really pretty down to earth. But sometimes we talk about them as if they're better than everything else we do. Certainly better than sports. Sometimes we overburden our messages. Come to the show, have dinner, buy something, have a night out, and contribute as well. Too many messages when you only have one message, which is buy a ticket. Too often our messages don't lend themselves to the media that people actually use. How many of you buy advertising in the papers? Occasionally. Well, there seems to be, I think it was Henry Ford who said, I know that 50% of my advertising dollar is wasted. I just don't know which 50%. So you can't give up the newspapers entirely. But understand that other than looking up the times when the movies start, very, very few people go to the newspaper to find out entertainment options. And the common consensus is that even in the media on television, you have to hit a message 5 or 6 times before it actually registers in somebody's consciousness. So what we're talking about is persuasive messaging. I'm not saying that you can't ever use the word celebrate. I'm not saying that you can't say, the critics loved our show, because it's a great show. What I'm saying is you have to be careful what language you use to understand the perspective of the people who are receiving that language. And then look at your own behavior when people feed stuff to you. How do you react to the messages you're getting? You need intimate knowledge of your audience as best you can get it. You need to inform people in a way that resonates for them. So if you know that you're sending a message to a seniors publication, you've got to tailor that content so that it resonates for people who read seniors publications. If you're trying to reach that 20 to 30 demographic, you're going to have to put stuff out that actually registers in 140 characters or less. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. In our everyday lives, when we try to persuade somebody to do something, it's spontaneous. Come on, Mom, come to the movie with me. Come on, sis, let's go to a show. Let's go to dinner tonight. Why don't we all go down to Kenosha and go to the Renaissance Fair next weekend? We do this automatically. We do this in intimate language that we understand is shared by the people we're talking to. You yourself or your marketing people have to tailor their language so that it resonates for the people who are reading it. So here's what I would suggest. visit your website or your marketing materials, but maybe your website. Bring a total stranger along. Not yourself, not your staff, not your spouse. See if you can find a marketing specialist who works for an agency here in town and have them go to your website and try and buy a ticket or buy whatever you're selling and ask them pro bono to critique what they're seeing. In other words, look at your messaging system with fresh eyes. Not your own eyes, which are already jaded because you've been doing it for years and years, but somebody who is looking at it from the perspective of, this is what I do for a living, and I don't care whether it's toothpaste or automobiles or insurance or the arts, this is the way messaging and the media work. Find yourself a marketing specialist who actually makes a living doing marketing. Most of us do marketing so we can make a living doing something else. Marketing specialists market for a living. I don't all go to the same one because I'm sure that there aren't dozens and dozens in town, but it's real easy to get somebody to help you do this, by the way. You go and say, look, we know that you do this for a living. We're a not-for-profit. We're not asking you for money, we're asking you for an advice. Take a few minutes of your valuable time and help us do this. You know, for those of you who do development and fundraising, who actually go out and do development and fundraising, there's an old cliche. If you want advice, go and ask your wealthy patrons for money. If you want money, go and ask them for advice. In other words, seduce them into your equation. Make them part of the solution to your problem so that they want to figure out the answers themselves. And then they get to see that you're willing to do the things and take the actions that they are suggesting, and they'll come along as well, because now they're suddenly invested in the outcome. Okay, so that's my next recommendation, is to find a specialist. My colleague for this workshop that we did says that very often we go out and market in ways that we ourselves would find offensive when people market that way to us. Right? Anybody guilty of that? Do we dislike the stuff that is actually handed to us? But when we turn around and put it out ourselves, we put it out in the same format, in the same way. In other words, we often market in ways that we ourselves would rather not be marketed to. Nobody buys tickets or paintings, for that matter, for intellectual reasons. They buy them for emotional reasons. So one question you can ask yourself as you're preparing your market message is, what emotional benefits does your work actually provide? You know, people who are in the arts are actually in the business of marketing peak experiences. It's especially true of the performing arts, but the truth is, those of you who are visual and plastic artists, you've seen that look when somebody walks up to a piece and says, oh my. You don't know what it is, but suddenly it resonates for them. It cracks open some kind of space in their minds that says, this thing is real for me. For performance, well, Elizabeth knows this too. When those of us who put on shows, especially those of you who love to be on the stage, the happiest moment for a presenter, for a producer, for a director, is when the curtain comes down, the audience leaps to his feet, cheering and screaming and yelling, and you stand at the back and you say, you know what, I had a hand in making that happen. I had a moment in bringing all this to life. Well, what is it that you're really selling to them? It's not George and Martha's problems in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It's that ecstasy at the end when they realize that they've experienced something that is out of time and space and was extraordinary and suddenly mattered in a way that the mundane, everyday stuff of their life doesn't necessarily matter all that much. My friend Joshua, who helped me put this together, you know, we are selling, well, if you're selling art pieces, then they're forever. And you can sell that too. Have it forever. That experience, that moment of love and ecstasy is yours for a lifetime. And it'll be there every time you come home from vacation, every time you come home from work. For those of us who are in the performing arts, You're selling something that's very ephemeral, something that's temporary, something that's momentary, something that's instantaneous. You're selling feelings, you're selling a state of mind. So you have to tailor your message to convey convincingly that you're buying into something that will actually work for you in a way that nothing else really does. And everybody's had that experience somewhere. Your brand, if you're an organization, your brand is not your mission. Your brand is not your identity. Your brand is actually the public's experience of you. In other words, I don't know if this is a Crest crowd or a Colgate crowd, but whatever it is you're committed to, you're buying into the product. It's all toothpaste, but your version of that toothpaste is what resonates for you. So the public's version of your theater, their understanding of it, even if they don't ever go to it, is your brand. And you've got to decide if the brand that people are experiencing is the one that you want them to experience, and if they're not, you've got to craft your message so that it comes across conveying about you what it is that you really want people to hold as valuable about you. Is this making sense to you guys? Okay. Because it sounds like abstractions, but the truth of the matter is, it's specifics, it's tangibles. Where does this audience live? Where do they work? When does their workday end? Where do they congregate? Where do they socialize? Are they Gen Xers? Are they millennials? Are they family people? Are they retired people? Are they senior citizens? What do you know about them? Where are their places of congregation? What are their vehicles of communication among themselves and among each other and among the places that they interact with? We need to be more precise in our words, not more vague. Like I said, celebrate the arts. No. Knock your socks off. That's a little more like it. How many of you use pictures in your advertising? Well, you use pictures of your work, right? Okay. You ever put a picture of somebody looking at your work?
Yes, I have.
There you go. Those of you who sell tickets to performances, don't show me a picture of a guy at the piano in a tuxedo. Show me a family of 20 people in the front row screaming and cheering and having a great time with smiles on their faces. What are you selling? You're selling the guy in the tuxedo? Perhaps. But what you're really selling is the outcome of putting him up there in the first place. And what you want your audience to buy into is not what a great artist he is, but the experience he can convey for them. And you do that by showing people having that experience, that coming together. Sometimes we have a difficult time just accommodating the logistics of events. Parking. You guys have parking problems? Yeah. We know where our patrons want to park. They want to park adjacent to their seats. Okay, all right. You need to make the experience of going to your performance a very, very easy, almost unavoidable one from beginning to end. From the moment somebody says, I think we're going to go to the show on Saturday night or next week, to a week after the performance when they say, boy, didn't we have a great time last Saturday? You need to kind of monitor that whole experience. Finding out where to buy the product or buy the ticket. How easy is it? Does your website say box office or upcoming events? Your website on every single page should have a click that says, buy now. The website that we used in Rockford, it was hard to get off the page without buying a ticket. Okay. How many of you have actually gone onto your website and actually tried to buy something? Yep. Did you like doing it?
Do I like doing it?
Did you like the experience of trying to buy a ticket?
It works, so.
It worked because you knew it. Have a stranger do it and have them tell you whether that website is working. Information. Your night at the theater. Your maintenance of this piece. Transport. How do you get it to your home? What's the deal on actually owning and taking possession of it? Insurance issues, maintenance issues. For the theater, traffic, time to arrive, appropriate dress. What's the appropriate dress for the symphony? Anything you damn well please. That's the appropriate dress. For the players, we know what they're supposed to wear. For you, you're not required to dress up the way the cellist is dressed. Does your audience or potential audience know that? We used to do an advertising campaign called "Come as you are, leave different." Okay? You can steal that one, by the way. That's cheapy. Okay, let me stop for a second here. Does anybody want to say anything? Anybody want to throw something at me? Comment on anything I've said? Challenge?
Well, you talk about knowing your audience, and do you know who the people are that actually come, but how do you find out about who the people are that aren't coming?
Yeah. We know who we know. We don't know who we don't know.
We don't know what we don't know.
Well, one of the things that Cameron McIntosh says is that after the big, huge 3 years of raging success for Lion King, all of a sudden their marketing numbers started to deteriorate a little bit. They were making hundreds of thousands instead of millions, okay? Because it helps to have a good product, by the way. Go out into the audience at intermission. Hi, it's nice to see you here. What brought you to the show tonight? Anything in particular? Well, my in-laws are in town from Ohio, and we thought we'd take them to a show. Great, so we know that people use their tickets to avoid having to spend too much dinner time with their family. Okay? You can market the opportunity for that shared experience for those people as well. I understand what you're asking me, and I don't know a good answer to that question. But somehow or other, the people who sell the hamburgers and the people who sell the toothpaste are able to figure out where their buyers are and where to reach them. I'm assuming that you market universally, but you target certain zip codes in certain parts of town because you're assuming that that's where your audience is to be found. Are there places where you can find that audience assembling for other reasons and insinuate your message into there? We're going to do a quick little exercise here. I want you to tell me in 5 sentences or less, anybody, we'll take them in any order, we'll just do about a half a dozen of them, a marketing idea or action that you took that worked, that you're particularly proud of or was really successful. Something you did. It could have been a promotion, it could have been a particular marketing statement, a particular ad and the configuration of it.
Well, I was thinking for the performing arts that they should be linking with English teachers. I mean,
Yep.
I did costuming for the high school for 10 years, and I talked to all the English teachers, and all the kids would get an extra credit point or
Right.
something if they showed up for a performance and took the program back to school.
Right.
So, I mean, that could happen at the university level, it could happen at the high school level. I think connecting more to just English teachers, would help that crowd.
And that speaks to what Julie said about where are the people you're trying to reach? Well, there's, if depending on the product, they're sitting in their high school English class. Well, what's your link into that place? Joshua, the guy who worked this up with me as a performing artist, and he does an Edgar Allan Poe piece. Right? He does a one-man Edgar Allan Poe presentation. I said to him, year before, go to the presenters who are bringing you in to do your Edgar Allan Poe performance. And have the presenter go to the English faculty, either at the college or the university or at the high school, and ask them to put Edgar Allan Poe into the curriculum. This was 2 years ago, which was an Edgar Allan Poe anniversary year. Put them into the curriculum. The marketing people at the Performing Arts Center that was presenting the Edgar Allan Poe show, buy the book. Buy 100 copies of Edgar Allan Poe's poems for the English teacher so that every kid can have one. 100 copies of Edgar Allan Poe, $250, $300. You can have one for every kid in the high school. then make the kid come to the show. In other words, look for the literary and the intellectual link and go to the mechanism that will connect you with those kids. You know, we all know the kids are our future audience and they seem to be slipping away from us. The truth is they're all slipping away from each other as well. They would rather walk down the street texting each other back and forth than turn right or left and actually talk to each other. We've got to break the cycle of insularity. We never know when we're going to make somebody's life change. You never know when some kid is going to have an experience that says, ah, that's dance. That's modern dance. That's ballet. And that's something I can learn to live with and love. So it's really important to work out the deals with the schools to get the kids to come to those performances. You know, we've seen it all before. 700 screaming middle schoolers kind of wriggling and squirming in their seats. But I promise you that at every one of those performances, one or two of those kids is taking it in and being affected by it. So really what I'm saying is, clean up your language, learn as much as you can about the people to whom you're trying to deliver that language, make it language that you would find acceptable to yourself. Craft your messages so that the audience perceives that the product that you are selling speaks to a desire that they are experiencing. It's not going to work for everybody. The truth of the matter is the arts are of documented interest to maybe 20 to 25% of the American population, at best. And that's a very, very broad assessment of interest in the arts. So we know that they're not to everybody's taste. But we do know that there are enough of them there so that if only 10% of the non-attenders actually started showing up, we'd all be rolling in it. So why do we do this? I'm teaching a seminar up at Stevens Point this semester, and the kids say, well, why did you spend a career in the arts? I said, it's very simple. Free tickets. I've gone to hundreds of shows that I never would have been able to go to see if I hadn't done that myself. Well, that was the facetious answer. The serious answer is a little more complicated than that. The arts are unnatural. What I mean by that is they don't exist in the universe naturally. I mean, nature is beautiful, and we can declare it to be so, but it's not art. Art is something that people make. Art is something that is manufactured. As a matter of fact, there is no art in the universe unless a human being has brought it into being. So the truth is, it's a manifestation of who we are as people, just like charity is. Nature is not charitable either. Nature is indifferent to charity. So we make art. Well, why does it matter? If you think about history, we remember past civilizations. We remember their wars. We remember their politicians. We remember all kinds of things about them, the disasters they've experienced, their breakthroughs in science. But whether it's the Greeks or the Romans or the Middle Ages or the Renaissance or the 19th century and the 20th century now, what do we actually use from the past? We use the music, we use the theater, we look at the art, we use the dance. In other words, we remember the past, but the only portion of the past that we actually bring into the present and actually participate in is the art that was made. We're all just passing through. And some of us will leave here with a lifetime of very, very wonderful, ecstatic experiences. And some people will have lived pretty humdrum lives, and they'll be okay with that as well. But if you can inject those peak moments, those peak experiences, that's work worth doing. That's why I love working in the arts. As I said before, being able to look at an audience that has really been taken out of time and place and confronted with a reality that was more real than their everyday lives tells them they're alive. That's the wonder of it. But there's a factor here, which is quality. You must deliver quality. Only the best It may be only the best that you can afford, but at the price you can afford, make sure it's the best. Why is quality so important? Let's take that high school kid who's never been to a symphony concert before. I don't go to the symphony. Why not? It's because I don't like symphony. Well, when's the last time you went? He says, I've never gone. Oh, well, how do you know you don't like it? Well, okay, I'll go. It's kind of like, eat that. My kid says, no, I don't want to eat that. I said, just eat it, try it once. You don't like it, throw it away, and you never have to eat it again. But you got to try it once. So we kind of coerce people into that, all right? So the kid goes to the symphony, and they play something that is absolutely enthralling and magnificent, and the kid is transported to a time and place he never thought it existed, and he's a symphony lover for the rest of his life. No, he goes to the symphony, and the orchestra plays abominably. He says, oh my God, I was right all along. Okay, we are in the business of making converts. We are trying to convert kids, audiences, into lifetime, lifelong arts consumers and participants. That's why quality is so critical, because you never know when you've got an opportunity to make a convert, and you don't want to blow it by delivering something that's worse than it could have been. If it's as good as it can be, and the kid says, I don't like it, that's fine. But at least you've given it your best shot. You put out mediocrity, you're guaranteeing a mediocre response, if not a lot worse. That's why the quality is so absolutely critical. So, I never got finished with the exercise about giving you that marketing idea that worked, but why did I want to do that? I've sat in rooms with other presenters when we did this marketing kind of stickimithia workshop. Tell me about a marketing thing that you did that worked. Well, once we did this thing with the Edgar Allan Poe deal. Tell me about a marketing thing that you did worked. Well, once we did a twofer for a very specific group. Tell me something that you did. Well, we knew there was a convention coming to town a year ahead of time. We programmed the performance and we sold it to the convention planners because we knew that on the Tuesday night of the convention, everybody would be bored to hell and we had to give them something to do. So we gave them a super duper price. We gave them a show that they would love. They knew that their attendees would be able to attend, and willingly we did that too. In other words, the best marketing ideas are the ones that have worked, and the best people to get them from are your friends and colleagues who have actually tried them and had them work for them. So let me recap, all right? Go to your vehicles for marketing with fresh eyes, or have somebody who is unconnected and objective look at your vehicles, your website, your print materials, your advertising, your print ads, your copy, your radio announcements. Ask somebody who is neutral and not invested in your enterprise to judge what it is that they're doing and ask for their opinion about how it's working. Because we all look through our own veiled eyes. Tailoring your message. You can't do hundreds of messages. Actually, the truth of the matter is that these days we almost can do hundreds of messages, and we target the audience respectively so that the social media message goes to the 20 and 30-year-olds, and the wonderful retirement message goes to the 50 and 60-year-olds, and the can't get away from your parents, come to our show on Saturday night, they'll drop you off and pick you up, goes to the high school kids. In other words, try to tailor your message so that it is resonating in the ears of the people that they're intended for. Language that actually works, that's dynamic, that's succinct, that isn't vague or laudatory or kind of meaningless. In the end, all you can do is keep on doing what you do. But it's time to try new ways of doing things. And what the heck? Try something radical. Somebody comes along and says, let's try this. We've never used that kind of language in our brochure before. Well, why not? It's because this is the language we use. Well, is it working? Give it a shot. Okay. Ask me something. Anybody. Anything. Yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask your opinion 10 years ago up in Madison, that area. When you first heard of Janesville, did culture kind of jump out at you? Or did you have I guess not being negative, I'm really glad with two council members, and that's one, have Janesville's kind of behind the 8 ball. I mean, I kind of grew up in this area where it always have been a blue collar.
Do you think Beloit is behind the 8 ball too?
Not anymore.
Well,
I'm
there's your
shocked.
answer.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
your answer.
I kind of,
And Eau Claire is not behind the 8 ball either. There's attitude. There's point of view. You know, Julie and I spent a lot of time in Rockford. When I moved to Rockford, in 2007, 2008, the Chamber of Commerce was running a campaign. Basically, it was a campaign which was called the Rockford Pledge. And they were asking people to pledge not to badmouth the town. And I thought, what? You have to take a pledge to not badmouth the town you live in? You know, if you take an affirmative attitude, everybody will, it's what Gandhi said. Be the result that you want to have. I had no assumptions about Janesville. I've lived in Madison for 50 years. I always know that Janesville is here, all right? My assumption about Janesville is no different than my assumptions about Wanakee and Cedarburg and Brookfield and any other town. It's that any town can have the culture and the arts and the entertainment and the social life that it wants. And we've seen enough examples of places that have gone in and said, we're going to make this different in order to have that come into reality. Well, you know, there are skeptics and naysayers everywhere. Yeah,
It's a valid point.
I agree 100% that you are what you.
yeah, you've got to be what you want to become.
Positive, and I know you're, yes, thank God, you know, there are people who are changing. It's just a culture that is.
Well, look. Here's a woman who lives in Janesville. Geographically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. She's got other places. It doesn't make a lot of sense to live here.
It's an awesome place to live.
Yeah. All right.
I'm from Milwaukee and all these other places, but my husband and I chose to be here, and we've chosen to stay here and do a rather long commute every day.
That's
But
awesome.
It's a great community.
It should have a vibrant arts. I mean, it's got a lot of potential, a lot of beautiful structures. It's got.
So you got a lot of folks driving to Overture in Madison or driving up to the Market Center in Milwaukee? So sometime you put out an ad that says,
Safe gas.
why don't you do it as a, here, mileage, driving time, cost of parking. It costs $6 an hour to park outside the Market Center. All right, and then you get to the end and say, what's the show that's playing? Well, it's this or that country band, or it's this or that stand-up comic. And by the way, they're going to be in Milwaukee on the 23rd, and they're going to be in Janesville on the 24th. You do the math, okay? In other words, you've got stuff going for you. You've got to sell what works and not, you know, there's an assumption, and by the way, what I said about ticket prices is true. That ticket price is probably a lot lower here than it is in Milwaukee, too, for a lot of different reasons. Somebody else? Yeah.
Yes, you have experience, you work at the Overture, and that's an example of an extremely generous donation by a family.
It's unique.
It's very unique. How important you think private, I mean, donations in a community, if you have key donors like that can jumpstart a community. For example, we were talking about Janesville. I don't know that we have families like that, where
deep
you
pockets.
can see big, huge donations like that.
But who would benefit from a vibrant cultural scene? Realtors? Now, the real estate guys and women may or may not have a lot of money to spend, but they do have an interest in promoting the cultural content of the community, so that when they're selling houses, they can say, oh, by the way, it's a 10-minute drive to the PAC, where these things are going on every season. All right? How about your restaurateurs? I bet when you got a show here at the PAC, there are reservations and there are full tables, as opposed to the nights of the week when the PAC is dark. Okay, so when I go to the website and I want to buy a ticket, I want to see, if there are only 3, I want to know that they're the 3 best in town. Okay? And by the way, we made a deal with the restaurants so that if you go to them after the show for dessert and a drink, and you bring your ticket, they'll give you one for free. They'll give you half price on one. Or pre-show dinner reservation, park at the PAC, restaurant has a van, we'll drive you over after your meal so you don't miss the curtain. So your restaurateurs have an interest in the success of the space also. You allow carry-in? Yes. By the way, it not only doesn't matter what you wear as long as you wear something, but you can also bring your beverage into the auditorium and enjoy it during the show. Make the amenities part of the enterprise so that people understand what they're letting themselves in for when they say, well, I've never been to the PAC. I'm not sure where it is. Well, the directions are right here. I'm not sure what to wear. Whatever you're comfortable wearing, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to be looking at you. They're all going to be looking at the stage anyway. Yeah.
I have a question. What do you believe in the marketing potential of a controversy? Because like when we had a discussion about is alcohol or drinks appropriate at JPAC, or is it a bad idea, or is it a good idea? It's kind of controversial.
Yeah, well, at the venues that I've worked at, it's the sponsor's choice. We didn't do carry-in drinks for the symphony for their classical concerts, but we did carry-in for the Pops concerts. Because they knew that the audience that was coming to the Pops concert would have a better time. As far as it's being controversial, I'm not sure about the old business. I don't care what they're saying about me as long as they're talking about me. But the truth of the matter is, if it got into the papers, I bet there are a lot of people who didn't even know it was an issue.
Right.
And the JPAC wasn't even on their radar screens. Well, why is this a question mark? Well, because is it appropriate for people to carry drinks in? Well, what are they going to see? Oh, they're going to see Gabriel Iglesias. Well, they're going to want a Corona. Okay? They're going to see the symphony. Well, they're going to sit there and listen to the music. They don't want glasses clinking and clunking. They're going to hear a Pops concert. They're going to go see a Nutcracker, and their kids are in it. It's okay to take pictures, as long as it's okay with the artists. It may not be okay. What I'm saying is the controversy generates attention. Controversy was legitimate because there were different points of view on it. You pre-order before the show starts, and you go and pick up your drink because they prepped it during the first act. And you just go and hand in your ticket stub, and they hand you your drink, and it's ready to go. You don't have to wait in line at all. Well, that's why she's good at what she does. All right. Better still, how about get some really tech-savvy nerd around town someplace, right? I want you to give me a program here where I can order a drink on my phone and pay for it on my phone, and all I have to do is walk up at intermission and pick it up. Hey, I got my drink? Yeah, oh, there you go, Mr. Smith, here's your drink. In other words, tailor the medium to the audience. You don't want to do that for the symphony because they're going to say, Helen, I can't make this damn thing work. But for the high school kids, they know exactly how to do that. They're the ones who are buying stuff faster than you can actually identify what's for sale. So come up with a system that'll do that for you. Did I answer your question about controversy? I think controversy is a good thing. How about this? The newspapers, fair and balanced coverage. We got 48 letters in favor and 2 against, so we printed 2 of each, and we call that balanced coverage.
I was referring to it in the sense if you were saying kind of liven up the language and to look for, to sell it for the product for what it has to offer. It just seems to me that when you have an issue that can be looked at in 2 different ways, that can bring interest in.
Then let the community communicate it.
Being concerned that there's a conversation about it.
Sure. I wouldn't be concerned about the conversation. That conversation is happening, especially if there are 2 points of view on it. Let the public play that out for you. Let your supporters argue in favor and let your detractors argue against. But let the public know that the drinking and the alcohol is an opportunity. And you can like it or dislike it. The truth of the matter is the people who don't like it are going to complain no matter what. The people who like it might actually show up to get a drink. All right. I don't want to ramble on and on here. I just want to go back to
Well, I just wanted to ask your opinion about like my generation of dealing with like Netflix of late, you know,
Right.
trying to persuade my friends and family to come to something that most likely is more expensive than a Netflix monthly subscription. It's most likely, like the ticket prices, you know.
Right.
And so that's what, I guess that's my biggest hurdle.
Well, the students I worked with some years ago basically put a campaign together that said live is better. And qualitatively, there is a difference. You know, acting, those of you who do it, there seem to be a lot of people, a lot of actors in the crowd. Acting is very, very dangerous work. It is extremely risky. It's not risky because you're going to fall off the stage or get hit by a lighting instrument. It's dangerous because in order to be real, in order to be believable on stage, you have to tap into parts of yourself that most of us spend most of our time suppressing or hiding from. In other words, in order to be believable, you have to draw up the feelings and experiences and emotions that are yours and put them in the context of the play that you're in. And that means that actors and performers and musicians and dancers are exposing themselves to terrible risk by letting themselves be free enough to become real and believable for the audience. I bet your friends spend a lot of time on Netflix looking at apocalypse movies. Right?
No, they're more like British television shows and things like that, but yeah.
Well,
There's wide.
yeah, I mean, it's difficult, I understand that, but somehow or other, they go to one performance where they suddenly realize that those people up there are actually there, all right? It wasn't edited, it wasn't pieced together, it's actually happening. I mean, I would sell the aliveness of it as best I could. Anybody else? Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed here, I've lived in a lot of places too, in the last decade here is just the fragmentation of the audience.
Yes.
That, you know, in trying to be unique, people splinter off in different directions and they never gather back around to support the arts, let's say. If
That's
you
right.
wanted to put that under an umbrella. But I'm just wondering if should it be a campaign for arts then? You know, you talked about you need 5 television commercials to see it 5 times for it to resonate. And we have all these digital billboards now. I mean, are 5 flashes of the same message comparable to 5 TV commercials?
I would not put together a campaign that said support the arts.
Well, not support the arts, but live is better. I mean, you would do a campaign that just maybe had 5 different phrases, and live is better would be one of them.
How about live is better and there's a picture of the symphony? Live is better and there's a picture of a stage setting. Live is better. Look, when you're driving along and you look at an electronic billboard, you've only got about 5 seconds to actually take it in. 2 seconds, live is better. 2 seconds, dancers on stage. 2 seconds, live is better. The next batch of traffic comes along. They see the symphony playing. 2 seconds, live is better. They see a theatrical staging.
Well, I'm trying to get visual arts in there too.
Okay.
But I'm just wondering, is there a way to, you know, if your audience is fragmented, and I would describe that in the top 3 descriptions of Janesville. Just as soon as there's a difference of opinion, you can just see people run to the 4 corners.
How about changing it from fragmented to segmented?
Okay, sure.
So instead of these people are running away from each other, how can you identify the way to link to that segment that actually might really hear your message? You can't capture them all. Can you capture one? You can capture them all one at a time. You can't capture them all at once. They're not going to come together around a central idea.
Well, I was thinking the billboards because I think in a situation like that, they have to give 20% of something to nonprofits. And I don't know how many of the acting groups are nonprofit, but it seems like it would be an avenue to start to draw the energy together, you know.
I have to confess that, you know, the visual and the plastic arts are not my specialty, but it seems to me that their combined campaign among multiple artists or galleries to kind of generate attention collectively is going to work better than segmenting, because we We've never been able to, my wife and I have not bought a lot of art over the years. Because we don't have enough money to buy a lot of art. But we have bought the things that we really wanted to buy. And more often than not, we've done it at a fair or at a gathering of some kind.
Do you have some examples of successful collaborations between different disciplines in performing arts, where you have artists working with theaters in some kind of a way that was successful that you can share?
Yeah, in Rockford, the art walk happened over a weekend that everybody knew a year ahead of time. And we knew the timing of the art walk. And we knew when things were wrapped up, so we did a couple of shows that actually started later so that the audience could actually be downtown and go to the performance post-art walk. In other words, like a lot of art walks, they had a destination and a map and a whole layout. And they kind of had suggested routes so that when the art walk ended for the people who were meandering along, they ended up in front of our box office. And then we had signage outside, and we had people outside saying, come on in, tickets are third off tonight for the art walk crowd. In other words, you've got to, yeah, collaboration is obviously a good thing. You've got to figure out how the collaboration can work to everybody's mutual benefit, as opposed to, I don't want anything else happening on the night that our show is happening, because it's never going to be the case. At very least, TCM is going to be happening on the night your show is happening. I'm pretty much done. I don't know if this has worked for you. I hope you will understand that there is value in sharing your challenges and your solutions together. If you've done anything that has worked, tell everybody else in the Alliance, this worked for us. They might be able to use it, they might not, but at least they'll know that somebody is having some successes, making some inroads. I'm not a miracle worker. There's a raging enterprise endeavor going on in Milwaukee and a lot of places around the country called creative enterprise, where the arts are tied into other kind of creative endeavors, architecture, graphic design, and so on. And basically, it's all about conversation among people with mutual interests and mutual desired outcomes. And I don't know the answer for Janesville, but I have no prior prejudices. I don't have a point of view on Janesville. I have no reason to think that the arts aren't thriving and doing dandy and which is great in Janesville. They weren't in Eau Claire, and they're starting to take some traction for themselves. They've always been pretty good in Wausau because they've had great leadership in Wausau for many, many years. But they went through a terribly difficult time when industries, and especially the insurance industry, started getting sucked away. But they tore down the middle of a block in the middle of downtown Wausau, right in front of the PAC. They turned it into a park, and now people assemble in downtown Wausau, and there are little shops and coffee shops and restaurants popping up all around. Wausau's a good place. There's the guys in Eau Claire, I can't remember what they're calling their enterprise, but it's down by the river in Chippewa, by the Chippewa River. And they've got a 3-year effort to kind of build facilities and generate traffic to the downtown area. They also have a couple of guys who started a tabloid, kind of like the Isthmus in Madison or the Shepherd Express in Milwaukee. And that has made a huge difference for the 20 to 40-year-old crowd. So if you've got somebody who really loves Janesville and has a flair for journalism and doesn't want to leave town, tell them to talk to these guys in Eau Claire who started the publication up there 3 years ago and are thriving. It becomes the vehicle, the alternative vehicle for a whole social and economic network that is not the establishment. It can be done.